All right, welcome to another episode of the Political Playbook podcast. I'm Wyatt, and this is my co-host Aaron. And today we are going to be talking about the Israeli-Palestinian ceasefire. Darren, I was actually thinking about how to bring us in on this topic, and I was thinking of this is the most crazy thing that's ever happened because who could have thought that Trump was going to be the one that gets this peace deal at least started, kickstart negotiations, and we're in a tough spot, right? Because if you remember, I shouldn't say I'm in a tough spot because if you remember a couple months ago, we talked about the idea of a U.S. president accepting, a $400 million luxury jetliner, right? And I was like, oh my God, can you imagine what it looks like, to accept a $400 million gift for no reason? Yeah, bullshit. Well, now I have to eat crow and say that the bribe worked because we're getting at least some sort of a peace deal out of this, or at least the phases of it. So I just thought that that was really interesting because I just kind of have to eat crow here because the Qataris' bribe worked. All the money that they've been giving Kushner, all the money that they've been giving Trump for golf and the jet, it it's actually it might get a recognized internationally Palestine, and I cannot believe that this is actually happening. So before we get into the details, I just wanted to get your basic thoughts. What do you think about this whole thing?
Well, it's interesting that you linked those. I had actually since forgotten about the whole airplane ordeal. It seems like forever ago now, because of this news cycle. But yeah, I mean, uh, in that sense, I am thankful that the Qataris bribed them because I do think, and I mentioned this in a past episode, I think the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, with Trump in terms of wrapping this war up, which, let's be honest, he could have done from the very beginning. I think the straw that broke the camel's back was Israel's unprecedented strike within Qatar, attempting to kill the diplomatic arm, or some members of the diplomatic arm of Hamas. They only killed a Qatari citizen, though. To
Just
my
to just to like stay on that for just a second, isn't it just a little crazy that Israel is not trying to target soldiers and military leadership? They are trying to target the negotiators of peace in a foreign country in Qatar. So I just thought that was interesting. So
Oh
go
yeah.
on.
Well, it's beyond the pale. It's a huge insult to the Qataris. It's a big insult to Trump. Personally, I'm sure he felt that way because he likes the Qataris quite a bit. I'll be honest, I like the Qataris quite a bit. They're a mediator between us and Iran. I really don't have much of a problem with them, but I digress. All that to say, yeah, I think that's an interesting point you made, and yeah, I think the bribe worked, and I do think it was the strike on Qatar that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But I actually had this written down as a question for you because other people have had theories like, oh, maybe Trump wants to wind this down because of business dealings. Maybe he wants to really do the Riviera, the Middle East, and the Gaza Strip. He wants to develop it, bring in investment. Maybe it does come down to the money. If there's instability in the region, then his partners in the Middle East are not going to be as prosperous. So in your estimation, what was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak? Why has Trump finally said Netanyahu no more?
Well, I think that it is an odd phenomenon because in January, I think if you would have told you and me that like, hey, Trump is going to basically force Benjamin Netanyahu to apologize in the Oval Office to the Qatari royal family, and he's going to force basically Netanyahu to at least agree to phase one of a peace plan. I would have called you insane. I would have said you're out of your fucking mind, right? And to some extent, I still kind of feel that way, but significantly less so now. But as far as to your question about like what is Trump's motive, like what is the reasoning for him like finally having a spine against Netanyahu, it could be. I have no idea. My best guess is that like, and I'm super serious about this. The only thing that Trump really like to his core cares about is the glorification of himself, right, and the enrichment of himself. Like he's all about Trump, right? That's the only constant I've ever seen. So I think that there is something about this Nobel Peace Prize that he wants. I mean, we've never really seen a person campaign to get and receive a Nobel Peace Prize, which it actually doesn't even make any sense why he's campaigning for this one because the Nobel Peace Prize for this year goes to events that happened in 2024, which obviously he couldn't be couldn't win, but I definitely, I, I definitely think that this is the clear number one issue to get him that Peace Prize, and he wants it, right? And I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
saying that to undermine a lot of the stuff that you said, because I definitely think that Jared Kushner already is taking like the business venture in the Middle East. Like I'm sure you saw, the Saudi royal family has like a $2 billion deal with him, right? Like they're very big over there. And I think Trump sees this as a potential business venture too. I mean, why wouldn't he? Right? So it,
Oh yeah. Well,
go ahead. That
oh
was
my bad.
basically it. No, that was
Well,
basically it.
yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think, the reasons are, I'm sure, multifaceted. Uh, who knows? It's only speculation what the main issue was, but nevertheless, I am glad that he's finally putting the screws in Netanyahu. However, my optimism is very cautious, and honestly, I'm not that optimistic. While it is great that I guess the prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners, many of whom have now returned to Gaza from Israel. I'm glad they're back, and I'm glad the hostages in Gaza's or in the Gazans' custody have now returned to Israel. So that's all good news and all that. But I don't foresee this ceasefire lasting quite as long. I mean, if it's because if it's anything like the January ceasefire, uh, was that January? Was it in January or was it in
Yes.
February? Okay, I didn't know if it was late January or early February. But if it's anything like that, I mean, everybody was jumping for joy at the time. Everybody was really excited, optimistic, but with a little cautious optimism. And turns out, Netanyahu had no plans to ever keep the ceasefire going. He wanted the war to continue, and so it continued. I think the incentives are still there for Netanyahu to keep the war going. I mean, already I've seen reports today, and for the audience, we're recording on Tuesday, October 14th, and I've already seen reports that Israel is breaking the ceasefire. So, in small ways as they do, but nevertheless breaking it. I don't know. I mean, how long do you predict this ceasefire lasts? I mean, we're kind of in the first phase of it. It's and that already kind of hides like the conceit or uh, that's already deceptive language. The Israelis say we're doing it in phases. Well, the 21-point plan was divided up in points. There aren't really phases so much, in this plan. I mean, there's like kind of with if you're talking about like withdrawal lines, then yeah, there are phases, but I don't know. I'm skeptical. I am very skeptical. I
Well,
think.
so I am skeptical too. I do think that there is more room for optimism here. And here's my thing. I think Obama had this idea understood, right? Is that you cannot. So, especially with a government like Benjamin Netanyahu, who believes in the idea of a greater Israel. And for the audience who may not know, Israel is the only country that refuses to draw their borders to the rest of the world because they do not believe in what they currently have, right? They believe in taking parts of, Egypt, like the Sinai, or parts of Jordan, or Lebanon, or Syria, right? They believe in or even Saudi Arabia, right, in the Fertile Crescent, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's you cannot negotiate with these people. So Obama literally had to go around the Israelis' backs to deal with Iran and form the nuclear deal. And they took it as a bat stab, and I'm like, okay, well, we can't deal with you. You are not, because they will do everything they can to leak the deal so that way it fails. They will throw in poison pills. They will do whatever they can to bomb it because they don't want a deal, right?
Oh
They don't
yeah.
want, and Netanyahu is being very open about this, right? He is going on Israeli TV and in front of the Knesset, and he is basically saying, like, this will not lead to a Palestinian state, period. That's he is like, absolutely not. That is not what we're conceding. We are only conceding to what he calls phase one, which, like you said, it's not really a phase one. It's really like, here are all the agreements, and the only thing that's in phases is like where Israel will continue to occupy. And I I am not optimistic that the ceasefire will hold because, I mean, I'm sure, as you know, just because there's a ceasefire to Israel does not mean that they're going to stop firing. And I know a lot of people that's like, that sounds crazy, but like, they had a ceasefire with Lebanon, right? And well, they still bombed every day. It just goes down. You know what I mean?
Oh
So,
yeah.
and
Yeah. It
and they've
never
already kind
stops.
of broken it, right? There's already reports of that, but I am I am not optimistic that this is going to lead to a Palestinian state, but it just kind of, and this is kind of the point I want to talk about, but like we'll get there when we get there, but like it's up to the will of Donald Trump if that happens.
It is. I mean, he is the only individual in the entire world, really, that has the capacity to put the screws in Netanyahu, and it's scary because Trump is so eccentric. I mean, his opinion could change hour by hour. I mean, it's an old Bill Maher joke, but sometimes he'll contradict himself and change his mind within one sentence. So, there's just no telling, what day by day, what his mood will be. And I do think, in a weird way, he almost respects Hamas more than his predecessor Biden. I think he's been more willing to engage with Hamas one on one, like talk with them. Maybe not him talking with a Hamas official, but diplomats talking directly to Hamas. He's been more understanding in some ways. I saw a report that the Hamas is rearming for a brief period to regain minor control, but police level control of the strip. They're just trying to keep gangs from like looting and stuff, and Trump is totally fine with that. Uh he's not like laying into them about all that. He's being actually kind of surprisingly understanding. So yeah, it's interesting with Trump. Sometimes I find myself, being optimistic because he's just so eccentric that almost any possibility is, or any outcome is within the realm of possibility. But yeah, his track record is not, what I would want though.
Yeah, and you got to think too, Hamas has got to be putting an awful lot of trust into Donald Trump, right? Because, I mean, like you said, he can be inconsistent, he can change his mind, and they're basically trusting him that he's going to be a fair broker here, right? He's going to kind of monitor the situation. And I think that the Middle Eastern states, such as like Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they did a really like strategically wise thing of like naming Donald Trump a part of this peace plan, because if it goes up in fucking flames, they understand that like, okay, it may have went up in flames, but at least he'll have hell to pay for it in America. You know what I mean? Like they have basically put his name on the outcome of this, and I think that that was pretty wise to ensure that like at least there is some form of negotiation going on, right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
um, that and Hamas, they had no reason to trust him, really, right? You know what I mean? So,
Oh yeah.
but they may view it as their best hope. And the real question is does Trump follow through on this, or does he get bored and he just say, screw it, because this is not going to get solved in 6 months, right? Like this may not be solved during his term. So, I mean, you got to think there's so much to like figure out here. Like, is Hamas going to permanently disarm? Is Israel going to recognize a state of Palestine? Is Israel going to fully withdraw? Who's going to govern the territory? Hamas said it's not going to be them. They said they're okay with it not being them. Well, if that's the case, then if it's not Hamas, who will negotiate on behalf of the Palestinians? There's just so many questions here, right? And they haven't figured out any of those things that I just told you, right? They're just kind of agreeing to talk about how they're going to tackle that. And I think that that is going to take some form of like rigor that I don't know that Trump has. So I want to be optimistic, and I feel like we have to be. But like if I was a betting man, I would say that there's probably a good chance that this thing blows up.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully, Trump and, if he's actually committed to lasting peace, hopefully he moves quick, because I do think that there is a window, right now, and I don't know how long it's going to last. Maybe it's a month-long window, which is pretty short in the grand scheme of things, but right now it would be so unoptical for Israel, which has already basically become a bit of a pariah state. Uh, they're not quite as closed off as, places like North Korea or anything. That's like the true pariah state. But really, the entire world is against their actions. So, if they were to renege on the ceasefire deal so quickly, I think it would just really be bad for them in the short term and the long term. I mean, they're just not winning any friends doing this. But I do think that, or well, I don't know, because if they do commit to the ceasefire deal, maybe they can get back in the good graces of everyone. They probably can. But if they do commit to the ceasefire deal, then logically that means the Palestinians will have, more free reign. They'll be able to roam around more within the strip. And, well, the Palestinians have cell phones, so they have cameras and they can show the destruction. The death count might finally be tallied up and become official. And, whatever that number is, whether, the official number is, 60, 70,000 right now, but I think it's likely on the high end, it could be 10 times that. That's not like an exaggeration. That's just actual, that's stuff I've seen from respected journals, and even the Lancet Medical Journal had a figure that said, it could be, oh, I forget the amount exactly, but it could be, well into the hundreds of thousands. And when that was published a long time ago, like in 2024. So, we're all already nearing the end of 2025. So there's really no telling what the number could be at this point.
Hmm. So let me ask you this: if this deal were to like go off the rails, what do you think? If and this is like a prediction question, what do you think would cause that? Like why and what would cause this deal to get blown up, and we're basically back to square one?
All right, well, what I think will happen, Israel will do an attack on a Palestinian. A Palestinian will retaliate in some form or another. Hamas will likely retaliate. And then Israel will use that as a pretext to go back in. Like, oh no, we've been attacked. We must kill them all again. So, yeah, that's kind of my assumption on how it'll start back. How about you? What do you think is likely to go down?
Well, I mean, so it's difficult, right? Because Benjamin Netanyahu, right, has every incentive to keep this genocide going, right? Because for people who don't know, he is facing all sorts of corruption charges. The government, the only reason it's standing still is because they're in military action and they can't vote. So he's there until the war is over. So he has every incentive to keep this thing going. And if that means blowing up a deal, that means blowing up a deal. And he's already talking about like, okay, we clearly can't rely on the United States forever, right? So he's doing everything he can to kind of prolong this war till he thinks that Israel can fight it on its own. So,
Oh,
uh,
speaking of that, did you see that speech Trump made at Israel uh, uh, in front of the Knesset? He mentioned something like, "Hey, y'all should give Benjamin Netanyahu a pardon." Yeah,
yeah, it
so
was about champagne and cigars, right?
oh yeah, that
Yeah.
was a line in there as well. So
And can you? I can't imagine that Obama goes over and talks about corruption like that. Like, could you? This is only a Trump statement. Like, it's only possible for an American president like Trump to make this statement because it's so unbelievably absurd that we're going to joke about a guy who is, he's undergoing allegations of like, it's bribery, fraud, breach of trust. It's like a bunch of weird stuff, right? And that doesn't even count the fucking war crimes by the ICC, right? Like we're just talking about crimes within Israel and this guy. So I think that he has every single incentive. And not just that, like I said, let's keep in mind in the back of our heads, this dude does not want just Palestine. He wants parts of Syria, parts of Lebanon, parts of Jordan, parts of Saudi Arabia, and he wants the Sinai Peninsula back, right? So I don't imagine him rolling over and being like, ah, you know what? We need a two-state solution with equal rights. That's what we need. Like
well,
it's absurd.
I certainly don't think he'll roll over, but I almost wish that they would pardon him. That way, he won't have, maybe he won't have this pressure to stay in, and he can just go on his merry way. It's kind of letting Israel off the hook, but maybe Israel could like scapegoat Netanyahu, even though they pardoned him, and then maybe they could get a new government in. Maybe the opposition could come in and, finally have this thing totally wrapped up, have the ceasefire fully implemented. Because, I totally agree with you. Netanyahu has no incentive to stop. And honestly, it's a pretty fraught set of circumstances because if Netanyahu doesn't feel that he can go back into Gaza to continue the war, what's the next front that he can juice up? Obviously, it's Iran. Because I'm of the opinion that he might go back in to finish the job. Uh, or try to at least get the U.S. to finish the job for them. So this is actually, in some ways, this ceasefire could be a fraught thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that's really important to like understand here is Israel is like according to this plan, it's going to like basically slowly retreat their occupation like the hard like borderline between like where Palestinians in Gaza can and cannot cross. So I think that it's really important that they understand that the occupation is not ending, right? It is just the scope is kind of decreasing a little bit. And it's really weird because this deal does not at all account for the fact that the press is still not allowed inside Gaza. So people from like the BBC or, CNN or the Times can go over there and like report. Israel has made that very clear that that is a hard line for them. They will not let journalists in there, and they say it's for their safety. I do not buy that. If you do, then I don't know what to tell you. They're just afraid of what they're going to report back. That it's as simple as that, and what they're going to document. And as if the photos that we have and the videos that we have aren't enough, they're afraid of like institutional uh, like evidence of what they've done. So and this is before they even pick up the rubble, right? Like whether they're going to start finding like hospitals, daycares, schools, and they're going to find mountains of kids underneath rubble, and they're going to be like, well, what the fuck? So
Oh yeah, yeah, it's going to be a PR disaster for them. But well, speaking of, you mentioned Nobel Prize recipients. Uh, with the possibility of Trump maybe getting one in the future, and it got me thinking of her name is Maria Corina Machado. She's like this like this Venezuelan opposition leader, and she actually dedicated her recent Nobel Prize win to President Trump, and obviously to get in his good graces, obviously because she wants to be, she wants to get closer ties to the U.S. She's probably a bit of a puppet, but that's fine. I'm okay with having puppets abroad. Um, I just wanted to get your thoughts. Does this kind of like, I mean, she is a Democratic opposition leader in Venezuela, but do you think that's, awarding somebody like this a Nobel Prize just because they're in opposition to Maduro? Do you think that's like, it like cheapens the Nobel Prize? What do you think? I mean, maybe she did earn it. I don't know, but just to add to that question, is the Nobel Prize like a tool of imperial power?
yeah, I mean, I kind of get what you're saying. And listen, the Nobel Prize has not had the weight that it used to. I mean, it for sure can, right? I'm not going to take that away. But I mean, like for me, like, do you remember when Obama won it? Do you know what Obama won it for?
I actually forget. I know he won it, but
It's literally just being president. Like I think it's something about like strengthening international diplomacy or whatever, but with no specific instance. It's not like he solved a particular crisis. It's just that like, yeah, he embraced cooperation between people, Like that's that's what he's so I
now if
think
they specifically cited the Iran deal, I could totally see giving him a prize for that. I
oh, for
think that would
sure.
be deserved.
Yeah, I think this was just kind of like, okay, whatever. But I'm sure there are some Nobel Prizes that are worth it. I can't comment. I have no idea if this particular woman has earned the right to say that like, yes, she deserved it. So I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, all that to say, I just wanted to kind of introduce her to segue into our other topic, Venezuela. So I saw this New York Times article. Basically, the gist of it was, we've been bombing these little cargo vessels, I suppose, or honestly, it looks like civilian water.
Fishermen.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably what it is. But, we have our warships, in their waters, threatening them, basically signaling to Maduro that if he doesn't play, you know, we're just going to kill him. Uh, it was revealed in a New York Times article that there was kind of like not much discussed, but a deal nonetheless worked out with Rick Grinnell that basically Maduro would stop exporting oil and, relinquish ties with China, Iran, and Russia, and would instead start exporting oil to the U.S. and letting, I mean, he already is exporting a little bit, but he would export like all of it to the U.S. Rather than a fraction.
Hmm.
And then he would let U.S. companies get all the contracts for gold mining and oil extraction within his country. So it would be like a total win for the U.S. just because he got afraid that we were going to kill him and we wouldn't have to shed any blood. But then it turned out that Marco Rubio basically scuttled this total win-win, basically just because he wants to see Maduro ousted. Like he just wants to kill Maduro. And there are reasons for this. I mean, Rubio is a Cuban. Cuba is allied with Venezuela. It's arguable that, without the Cuban Venezuelan relationship, maybe Cuba could collapse. So I'm sure there's like something to that.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, I don't know. I think if we can take all his resources without bloodshed, I think we should. I don't know. But I mean, obviously, Maduro's a bad guy. I think he probably stole the July election the July 2024 election, I should say, in Venezuela. At least that's what our paper of record states. Who knows if that's true or not. So if that's the case, he's not a good guy, but I mean, is it really our business to go kill him if he's going to give up all this stuff anyways?
Yeah, no, listen, I completely agree. You don't have to deal with angels, right? To, people like to beat people over the head for this, but this is, diplomacy. Unfortunately, I mean, this is just the world we live in. Like, you're not going to be dealing with angels who have Western Enlightenment values all the time and they believe in democracy and all of that. I mean, like, one of our closest allies is the Saudi Arabian government, or this I messed up. The Saudi Arabian royal family, right? Like, it's a monarchy dictatorship. Like, what are we gonna do? I if we can give, or if we can receive all their oil, which is the most valuable part of them, I don't see why not. I don't know why Marco Rubio would do that, other than pure just maybe but they just have to want regime change, right? So
Yeah,
it's very
I
weird.
mean, I've seen some arguments that claim if we got like this Maria Corina Machado, this Nobel Prize winner, if we got her in as president, rather than Maduro, since she's more cozy to capital and is not as communistic, that maybe an environment could be fostered, like a business environment could be fostered where more wealth could be extracted from Venezuela, and it would create a rising tide that would lift all boats. The Venezuelans would be better off because their resources would be more efficiently exploited. So even though a lot of it is going to the U.S., they would still see job creation, and they would still see a lot of wealth. So there's that argument. However, I mean that's a big risk. I mean you're gonna topple a government. It's not like Maduro is exceptionally popular within the country, but he does have his followers. So maybe you go kill the dude and a bunch of his soldiers, and that engenders resentment against the U.S. I'm sure it would. So, you're really playing with fire because in Trump's first term, he sanctioned Venezuela and was like starving the people. And lo and behold, we have the Venezuelan refugee crisis in the Biden years where like 10 million people come in. So what's the logical conclusion? We go topple this guy. What if 10 million more Venezuelans end up flooding in? So I'm totally like, okay, if we're gonna steal this dude's resources, let's just not kill him. And like, I mean, we can play nice if he's just gonna give it up. Like, why do we have to kill him? you know?
Well, and see, and this violates the very, like, one of the founding doctrines of regime change. It's one of the things we were supposed to have learned from all of our military exploits over the past 60 years, in that whenever you do regime change, there's no guarantee that the new guy isn't going to be worse, right? As a matter of fact, in pretty much all cases, the new guy is worse. So even if we do kill this Maduro guy, what are the chances that this next person is going to give us this deal? Right? I can't say, especially if it's a democratic government. If it's a true democratic government, there is a very low chance that they're going to just volunteer their entire arsenal of oil. There's just no way. you know? That doesn't make any sense to me. But I don't know. It just this none of this makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I do see the avenue for it. I mean, because if they get this Machado woman in, uh, I do think that Venezuela likely, Maduro, he likely did steal the 2024 election in Venezuela. So it's not like this woman would be without support. So I think there is a lane. But yeah, I mean, surely this surely this would engender a lot of hostility within the Venezuelans just to see so much of their resources go to us, and basically act in our interests above theirs. But uh,
And what's really weird is that if he did go through with this, and even if he just puts more sanctions on him, if that's even possible practically, then it's just going to cause another like migration wave, right? And I don't know that that's something that he wants on his legacy, or he's just betting that it's going to go on to the next guy, which is exactly what happened under the Biden administration. All those tens of millions of people that came over because of the shit Trump was doing in the Central and South America. And it's like, dude, give us a break here. Um,
oh yeah, yeah, it's bad all around. But
Now,
oh my bad.
I just wanted to comment really quick. I cannot believe the strategy they're going with here. I mean, in the bombing of the ships, the boats. We have a Coast Guard, right? And the entire job of the Coast Guard is to stop ships, make sure there's no drugs, make sure there's no guns, make sure there's no illegal paraphernalia, right? Just and rather than doing that to these essentially fishermen, the Trump administration is choosing to bomb them, record it, put it out there, and offer no proof whatsoever that these people are like terrorists or cartel members, right? So, as a nation who prides themselves in due process, and as a nation who says that we're going to prove you guilty before we issue any sort of like criminal action on you, for to us to go from that to we're not going to tell you who was on the boat, we're not going to tell you how we know that they were cartel members, we're just going to start blowing up boats. We're just going to, in the hopes that it's going to provoke Maduro to shoot at one of our ships, and then we finally have the justification we want to bring the fucking hammer down on him. That's what he wants, and I cannot understand the strategy, especially when he's willing to capitulate. So none of it makes any sense. I wish Rubio would get his shit together and just take the deal, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I wish so as well. It is pretty messed up. I mean, I mean, they're probably just killing civilians, and the amount of drugs that come our way from Venezuela are pretty low. So yeah, it's pretty sad actually when you think about it, because these are probably just dudes minding their business, and lo and behold, they got shot by technology they can't even like comprehend. It's like way up in the sky. They didn't even see it coming. So very sad all the way. But let me get to the more philosophical aspect of it. Now, obviously, there are ways to go about uh, this process that are less bad, ways that are, going to cause innocent people less harm, that is. But what do you think about resource extraction in general? See, I'm in favor of, taking the resources of weaker people, that means, weaker nations, Venezuela. I'm totally fine with, you know, exploiting their natural resources, getting, forcing them to make contracts with our American oil companies, American gold mining uh, companies. So uh, I'm totally good with it. I have no moral qualms about it. I think, we're a massive empire. We're able to have this opulent lifestyle because we're willing to kill people and take things by force. Are you like morally against that, or are you basically okay with it?
Well, I'm definitely morally against like war for the sake of resources, right? And attrition. So for example, and I don't think that the wars in the Middle East were fought over oil, right? Like that was a big thing in the aughts, right? I don't really believe that, but I am against the idea of war for oil, war for gold, war for silver, war for food. I don't think that that's good. I'm not against in any principled way, like dealing. So I can, I'm for, dealing with anybody and even unfavorable deals, right? Like for example, like NAFTA or the USMCA or whatever Trump's going to call it next.
It depends really on the size of the enemy. Obviously, Venezuela is so weak and so in some ways unimportant that we can bully them, and it's not going to provoke much international outrage. It's they can't do anything to stop us. So in that sense, I'm all for just totally bullying them and to get our way. But if we were to pull the same stuff with Mexico, then I'd have problems, because Mexico, even though we would flatten them in a war, they have more of a capacity to fight back. They're our allies, so we don't want to be like looking like looking like we would be treating our allies poorly on the world stage. So yeah, I guess it all depends. In terms of Venezuela, I'm not like philosophically against, taking their resources by force. I just think that, you know, maybe we should wait for somebody more competent to get in office
Well,
when we do that.
so I'll tell you why I'm against it, and I'm not against it. So like a lot of people will use the argument that like, well, you know, we're not the little guy right now, but what happens if we are? Like, do we want if we go like in your example, if we go to war with Venezuela, topple them, and then extract their resources? Like, there's going to be a time when that's going to happen to us. People will make that. I don't buy that. There will never be a time where, say, like a China or a Russia can topple the United States and take all of our oil, all of our trees, whatever, right? I'm opposed to it for a slightly different reason, right? So, and it's hard for us to imagine this, Darren, because when our parents grew up, they grew up with the Soviet Union as a counterweight to the United States, right? Where
Yeah.
the ideas of the West and the ideas of the Soviet Union were almost on trial against each other, right? Well, with no Soviet Union, basically it's just the entire United States and the West on trial against no standard, right? So basically, we just have to live up to our own ideals and we win because China's not nearly on the level, right, as the entirety of the West. I mean, they're certainly on the rise, but nobody in a serious level is comparing the economy or the military output of these two countries. Not yet, anyways. So, but we don't want to leave these countries in a state where they would rather decouple from us and go to China. That's why I oppose such trade philosophy, basically. The idea that you're going to set up to where these people hate us because of our brinksmanship, right? Then there will be a time where China is at least a some level of parity with us on the military stage, on the economic stage, right? So for that reason, we have to be like, okay, these countries are going to have a choice because we're not going to be able to police dog the entire world. It's just not possible, right? We can't even police like particular counties within the United States. You're going to tell me we're going to police the world? I just don't buy it. So I think for just pragmatic reasons, we have to engage in like good faith negotiations, and even if you don't view it as good public policy, you should just do it because the alternative is that they go to China at the earliest available opportunity.
Well, you do make a good point. I mean, that is a good argument because let's go back all the way to like the Aztecs and the Spaniards. When Cortez rolled up, yeah, he was the one that fought the Aztecs, right?
Right,
Cortez.
right.
Sorry, there's I, I don't, that part of the world's history I'm not as well versed in, but I believe Cortez when he came to do battle with them and conquer them, he only had like I think a few hundred soldiers that came in on the ships. So he took down an entire empire, not because of these few hundred soldiers, even though they had advanced weaponry and armor. It was because the neighboring tribes that had been in like city states, which had been subjugated by the Aztecs, were like, yeah, let's team up with these white guys and like kill the Aztecs. And they did. I mean, they prevailed because of that. They had the advanced technology, but they also had numbers. So while no one state can, other than, I mean, China could definitely put up a fight, but really no one state could oppose us at this stage or at this day and time. A whole bunch of them could, if they all banded together. So that is a good soft power argument. You know, uh,
Yeah,
Definitely try to
yeah.
get people on your side through friendly means rather than just bullying them into submission.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying, right? Like the idea is, at some point you can't police the world. They're going to have a choice. Don't give them a reason to choose the other side. As a matter of fact, I think it would be better for everybody. Although, like, I do have to concede it would be slightly worse for us. Like if we just go in, bomb Venezuela and harvest as many resources as we can, that will maximize the amount of resources the United States has in the short term, right? I don't I concede the effectiveness of your strategy. I'm just saying that like if we look at a time horizon of say 50 years or 100 years, then does it become so obvious to do that? I really don't think so. And I understand that, like, our political philosophy has become, a 10, 15-year window, right? I think that's part of the reason we're losing is because China and much of Europe and much of the Eastern Bloc too, like Japan, South Korea, they have like 50, 100-year long plans, right? So plans that will outlive their current government. So I would love to see a more that type of thinking brought into American philosophy.
I concur. Hopefully, we can, especially figures like Trump. Hopefully, they can stop, thinking so short term. With Trump, especially, just looping back into the first topic. He's so eccentric. His time horizon is like a few minutes. So yeah, hopefully he can start peering out into many years beyond the time of his presidency.
Yeah, Witkoff is the one brokering that deal in the Middle East, and I think he's got his work cut out for him because this is not going to be easy. It's not going to be a cakewalk, and he's going to have to buckle in for the long haul. And I just hope he's prepared to do that. And not to relitigate the first topic too much of does it not just show a lack of spine and a lack of will from the Biden administration? Like, not to, because I don't ever like to just shit on Trump. And listen, there's not a bigger Biden supporter than I am. Okay. I mean, I thought the dude was a pretty underrated president. He just, father time is undefeated. But on this issue, he just could not have been worse. He could not have just rolled over more and let Israel do whatever the fuck they want. And all this proved to me is that it was a matter of will. That's all it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. He could have stopped the genocide at any moment, but he didn't have the uh, where rather he didn't have the whereabouts. Who knows how present he even was. I mean, I don't know the extent to his dementia. Yeah, I don't know how bad that was. Whether he was ideologically committed. I know he describes himself as a Zionist. I mean, how much
Oh
of a
yeah.
Zionist? I don't know. There's different flavors to Zionism, left wing, right wing. So I imagine he'd be a left wing Zionist, but
Yeah, I
who
mean,
knows? Who knows?
yeah. Who knows? And what's crazy is it would just be so easy to bring the reins back on Israel just a little bit. I mean, how about like A, no more money, B, no more veto power at the UN, right? Like I don't understand like those two things right there. I feel like Israel would instantly like learn to negotiate in good faith pretty fucking quick. But for some reason it's such a taboo to even recognize that we could do that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's such a multifaceted problem, and uh, it's entrenched as well. All these people have been brought up, uh, propagandized to believe Israel is like the greatest nation ever, and the Jews are the most persecuted people in the world, and we must have eternal sympathy for them, even when they are doing wrong. So that's part of it. It's there's the powerful lobby. There's a lot of money. There's certainly incentives to and disincentives to go against Israel. I mean, uh, I'm not a fan of this guy, but Jamal Bowman and I believe a representative named Cori Bush, a
Hmm.
female, they both were publicly against like APAC, and for that, APAC basically nuked them out of orbit, and they're no longer in Congress. So it kind of sends the message you can play ball, or you can choose to go your own way, and you won't have any power. So it's a multifaceted problem. I don't know why Biden was so slavishly pro Israel, but uh, he was. This kind of well, I'll end it on this. I'll ask you a question. I don't know. It's one of these things that you can't ever create a for sure answer. It's kind of unfalsifiable, I guess. Uh, but so I don't know if it's even worth talking about. But do you think Kamala, at this stage in the game, had she won, do you think she would have gotten this ceasefire arrangement by now, or what's your optimism, pessimism about her?
No, I have to be totally honest here, because it's very painful for me to say, but I think that Kamala would be just as complacent in the genocide as Joe Biden was, because from her perspective, and this is total speculation. There's no way to falsify this, like you said, but this is just my gut feeling. Okay, she has no real dog in this fight. This is not one of her core issues. This is not who she is. So I think that, in her heart, she was always apparently the one that was more sympathetic to the Palestinian people. But I think whenever you're weighing that versus like bucking the horse that is Israel, right, and the Israeli lobby, right, why would
Yeah,
she not just take the easy road and just do nothing like Biden did? Right? Especially if she had won. If she had won, she would be like, "Oh, this isn't even that big of a problem." They're gonna scream and holler on Twitter, but big fucking deal, big fucking deal. Um, but I do have to say this because that does what I just said does imply something that Trump is better on this, at least for now, because Kamala would not go against Israel for a million reasons, right? Whatever they are. But Trump is the only one that really has an avenue, which, although it's a bad one, which is self glorification, it is an avenue for peace or standing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. And listen, I don't care if he gets us a peace deal or if he gets us a recognized state of Palestine. I don't care that it's for selfish reasons or because he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. Like that, none of that matters to me. So
yeah.
I just have to kind of concede that that's the case, at least for whatever reason.
I agree. I don't think. I mean, I guess the intentions do matter in a way, but I mean, to me, they don't matter. If he wants to do a good thing for a selfish reason, I'm all for it. Yeah, it's hard for me to speculate on the Kamala thing. She might have. I could definitely see it both ways. I could see her being better on the issue due to pressure from her base. On the other hand, I mean, she really did not differentiate herself from Biden in any meaningful way. Her husband is Jewish, and, not to just paint with broad strokes, but I mean, that surely leads to some affinity with Israel. I mean, it's the Jewish state, so not that every Jew is a Zionist necessarily, but most of them are, and I'm pretty sure he is. So I don't know if that would go over well in her personal life if she were to be too staunchly anti-Israel. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, maybe I can't use that against her. Trump definitely has Jewish relatives. I mean, look at Kushner, Ivanka. He has a ton of Jewish friends. So, he has his personal reasons as well to support them, but uh yeah. I don't know. I'd say it's a wash. I can't quite tell. To me, with Kamala, it's 50-50 if she would have been better or worse. Truly, it's so hard to read her because she's also not that confrontational either,
Hmm.
I don't think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I pretty much agree. I don't. It's hard for me now. If this deal blows up, for whatever reason, I could definitely see the case being that Kamala was not better, right? Or sorry, was not worse. Was not worse. But like as it stands right now, like do I think that Kamala would have even gotten us to this point? I don't think so. You know, I really don't. And I don't think that she would have ever had what it takes to stand up to Netanyahu either. So